Hello.
Who are you?
People call me Cheerful Rudy. I don't know why.
How's it going, folks? Adrian here. Welcome back to the channel, and let's talk about Corepunk, a top-down MMORPG from developers Artifical Core, who has finally released more gameplay footage, and they also sat down to chat with IGN about the game, and I'm here to summarize the key takeaways from both of those info drops in this video. Let's get straight to it and begin with the newish information that players who have been following the game might have missed. First up, let's recap what was said about the game's class system. Following its reveal in December last year, there were concerns about players being locked into characters rather than classes, with the former ultimately deciding what role archetype you play and what weapon you use. Last night's stream did go into this, so at launch there will be 12 hero characters in total, while the closed beta test, which is coming up in Q4 of 2020, will have 6, and each hero will have 3 weapon masteries, meaning you can use 3 different weapons on your chosen character, and those are what decide what type of class archetype you become. In other words, you can be tanky, DPS, heals, or support. Now, not every character's weapon masteries will cover all those 4 class archetypes, but you can swap between them freely and indulge in their progression and upgrades along the way, never locking you into a specific playstyle. So your choice of character or hero, it seems, comes down to looks, and you can customize this later on in the game, but the weapon mastery trees are the most important thing for the long run. Next, let's talk content, and in the interview, the dev stated that creating a top-down MMORPG that utilized the fog of war system when players explore the world for the first time was an important factor, as that element of surprise and not knowing what's around the corner was something that MMORPGs, especially in today's market, don't do anymore. One of the major focuses for Corepunk was to ensure that there's enough to do for high-level and max-level players. And according to them, 40% of the content in-game will be leveling content, while the balance 60% is all catered toward end-game content. So the next obvious question is, what are these types of content? Well, we'll be getting tons of dungeons in different forms, for starters. There's the usual group-up dungeon crawls, there's solo dungeons, and even custom dungeons, which they failed to elaborate on, but I'm guessing that either means randomly generated landscape dungeons or procedurally generated ones, as opposed to player-created dungeons, because nobody does that anymore. You can also expect raids, of course, and open-world type encounters with boss mobs and other players who are flagged for PvP. We know from previous information that all these different activities will be incentivized, so there's no penalty for favoring one over the other or for preferring solo play over group play, which I think is fantastic. Now, the studio recently published this article about enemy camps on the landscape, but unfortunately they featured none of that in the gameplay video, but that's another type of landscape content that you can look forward to. All of this is, of course, in addition to a deep questing system, which the devs are very proud of. So it's safe to say from these new gameplay videos that there will be a main questline and other side quests, which explores more of the world, its characters, and the setting. I am disappointed, though, at the lack of any mention about the game's endgame progression, because that 60% of endgame content can only do so much to retain players, and the game's progression system's pre- and post-level cap will be a crucial catalyst in that aspect, so hopefully we'll get more info about that soon. The last thing the devs talked about was the themes and the visuals, which on a scale of important info will probably rank at the bottom amongst us who are eagerly awaiting launch of the CBT, but just to quickly touch on it, you'll see 4 main concepts here: cyberpunk, steampunk, post-apocalyptic diesel punk, and mono fantasy punk influences in the game, be it from the design of the cities, the different biomes, the outfits, weapons, the soundtrack, and more, hence the name Corepunk. Now I gotta say, as far as interviews go, that was pretty underwhelming because most of the information we got last night could probably already be found in the game's website FAQ section, which is really thorough, or on the forums. I don't want to give IGN crap here for the basic questions because their audience are the mainstream gamers and not the hardcore MMORPG fans like us. Plus, I am using their video footage, so I gotta play nice here. But yeah, there's just so many areas about the game I'd love to hear more about. Anyway, with the official dev speak portion out of the way, I want to share with you guys my observations from sitting through the previews last night. First thing I want to touch on is the early combat footage that was shown. Okay, we've got 2 players partied up, both level 8 in questing, and in combat situations so far, to me at least, the early combat just looks a little lethargic and slow, and the animations for the melee sword dude, not that great IMO. I'm hoping that gets better the higher your level and the more skills you get access to, but speaking from a top-down MMO perspective, you can only watch your character sluggishly carry out combat commands for so long before you start tuning out. So again, I just hope this is all due to these characters only being low-leveled and not a barometer for how engaging or fast-paced the overall combat appears to be. And then we got that boss fight segment. Yeah, that got me pumped up. These characters get into a dialogue which gives you options to respond, and the player refused a story option which immediately began the boss fight. Now that fight itself is all the key ingredients I like to see. It looks challenging, lots of movement with AoE visual cues, and of course, story-driven. While I believe them when they say the whole game is solo-friendly, there were some parts of the gameplay that showed off puzzle sections requiring a second player or more, and I encourage these types of social play on the landscape because that's going to give it that MMO feel as opposed to a single-player ARPG. This leads me to my next point. The sound design, especially for the story shown off so far with the questing dialogue, looks excellent, or sounds excellent, I should say. I wasn't expecting to get any full voiceovers for the PvE, but I'm pleasantly surprised that it's there. Maybe the side quests aren't voiced, but if it's just the main quest lines, fine with me with that quality, because it sounds like a AAA when the game isn't. And when that happens, you know you're on the right track. If you watch the full gameplay video with headphones on, the ambient noises, the combat sounds, the soundtrack, and just the mixing in general is pretty top-notch in comparison to other top-down MMOs on the market today that just don't put a whole lot of emphasis or focus in that department. And lastly, I want to talk about the visuals as well. Corepunk runs on the Unity engine, and I've seen a lot of isometric top-down MMOs that look and run horribly on Unity. Not gonna name names here, but trust me, there's some crappy ones on Steam. In comparison, Corepunk looks and feels miles ahead. The influences we see visually in both the gameplay trailers we have now makes me like what I'm seeing even more. Lots of colors, the authentic and vibrant environments, and not just your standard blocky or run-of-the-mill fantasy type game. Having said that, if you've ever played a MOBA before, you'll be saying that this is nothing new, and that's fair. I mean, even the nameplate reminds you of LoL, right? Now call me crazy, but aesthetically, and from the vibes I'm getting from Corepunk, it does remind me a lot of WildStar, which was a full 3D MMO that's now dead, and I just can't explain it. It's something to do with the colors maybe, or the attitude that resonates from the setting and some of these characters. I just see an unrelated correlation, and that's a good thing for me at least, because it was really easy to buy into the world of Nexus and WildStar, and I'm sure it will be the same with Corepunk for me. And that's it for me, folks. I'm excited to see where Corepunk goes from here, and hopefully we'll get that closed beta announcement and date soon enough, not to mention more gameplay videos, system previews, and all that stuff. Now let's hear some opinions. What do you guys think of Corepunk and what was revealed so far? Share them down in the comments. Hit the like button for the love of MMOs, and hey, if you're new here, feel free to subscribe to the channel. I've got MMO news, reviews, all that good stuff. Once again, I'm Adrian, and I thank you for watching.